This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast created by Barbara Giamanco, who hosted the first 67 episodes. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider a sales career and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we appreciate your allyship. And now, your host, Lori Richardson.
Big shout out to our official sponsor, Reprise, the leading full funnel, product-led growth platform. With Reprise, your sales team creates, presents, and shares product demos, perfectly customized for each step of your sales motion. Go to getreprise.com/womenInSales to try for free today. I'm talking today with Heidi Solomon Orlick. Heidi is Senior Vice President of Arise Virtual Solutions, and she's also the founder of GirlzWhoSell. Welcome, Heidi. It's so great to have you.
Oh my gosh, Lori, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're always chatting on virtually, and so it's good to have a conversation real time now. And I have been looking forward to talking with you because we want to talk about the book Heels to Deals, of course. We also want to talk about Girls Who Sell, but I also want to hear about your sales career because when I first heard about you, I was in New Hampshire and I said, oh, there's another woman in New Hampshire that's talking about women in sales. How interesting. Because there aren't a ton of people in New Hampshire, but of all the people, you and I were both there. I'm not there anymore, but that was my first acquaintance with who you were. And you've just been a real powerhouse in the last year or so in the time that I've known you. And so let's talk about that. But first, let's go back to school. When you graduated from Northridge in journalism and speech, what did you think you were going to be doing?
Not what I'm doing now, to be completely honest. And that's probably a lot of women say that, right? That they kind of fell into sales. But I had these visions that I was either going to be a reporter or I was going to be traveling around the world working for National Geographic, maybe writing articles on albino gorillas or something, right? I don't know, but that was kind of what I thought I wanted to do. And then towards my senior year, I got really interested in advertising and marketing and thought that I wanted to have a career in the ad agency business. I was in California at the time, obviously, but I didn't really know anything about the advertising career. And just like sales, I mean, back that was a long time ago, 1982, I'm not age, but 40 plus years ago, there were not a lot of women in sales. And there was this woman, Mary Wells, who was CEO of a ad agency. And I think she was like the only woman. And she was CEO of an ad agency called Wells, Rich and Green at the time, going back a ways. And I just admired her, right? Like I was following her career and she was just this voice for women. And I was like, I want to be her, right? Like I want to be her. And so I picked up the phone and called her actually.
That was a cold call.
And that it was a cold call. And I spoke with her assistant and I said, listen, I'm interested in considering a career in sales. And I go to California State University, Northridge right now. I don't know anything about advertising, but do you think Miss Wells might be interested in speaking with me? And I'll be damned. She got on the phone.
Wow.
And we started talking and she shared about her journey and she ended up hiring me. Actually, I took a year off of school just from that conversation. She ended up hiring me in a position like a junior media assistant. And I did that for a year and she took me under her wing and I got exposure to the ad agency business. I worked on the Jack in the Box blow up the clown campaign and I was working on all this cool stuff. And then she said, listen, you need to go back to school, finish up your degree. But that was kind of my start. And before I actually got into a more traditional business to business sales role, I actually spent 10 years in the ad agency business.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
yeah, and worked mostly in client services and account management, and worked my way up, and then was doing sales and direct marketing, and was fast tracked. And after 10 years of, you know, martini lunches and traveling around the world, I worked on P&O cruises, and I was, jumping on legs of world cruises, and I really thought I was hot stuff. But I burned out. I did. I burned out, and I had a broken engagement. I was 30 years old. I decided that I needed to get out of the ad agency business, or else it was not going to end well. It was affecting my health. And so I quit, and I got out and was trying to really figure out what I was going to do with my life. And met up with a guy named Ken Tuckman, who was a friend of a friend. And he owned, at the time, was a $14 million business process outsourcing company. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "My life is completely imploded." And he said, "Great, come and work for me as my vice president of sales." And I said, "I don't know anything about the telemarketing business." He said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Nobody does, right? We're figuring it out every day."
Wow.
And 2 days later, I was vice president of sales, and that was the beginning of a 34-year career.
Wow, that's interesting, because back then advertising, it probably still is, but it was a really tough business. And I know, because I was selling technology to ad agencies. And I remember one of the ad agencies in the Seattle area where I lived, and the founder, his slogan was, "You're 2 steps from the sidewalk." Like, you could be out the door, the next day. And it was just very cutthroat from the people that I knew anyway. So that was a neat move that you were able to make. And then how did Girls Who Sell come about?
Yeah, well, so even back then, I began to really understand the power of mentorship and how women really need to stick together. And, there weren't very many role models, particularly even then when I transitioned out of advertising into, high value BPO technology sales. There were just no women, right, at all. And it still continues to be very male dominated. But I had an incredibly successful career. And, I had, over the last 34-ish years, had always tried to mentor and sponsor women and be role models. I set up ERGs at different companies in support of women, but it was always within the context of the companies that I worked for. And it was really after the death of my parents in 2019 that, caused me to take pause and really reevaluate my life and where I was at, and what my life's mission was, and what kind of impact did I want to have on the world, and how could I leave the world a little bit better place than how I found it. And I came across that famous Harvard Business Review article that talked about how women are the future of business to business sales. And I don't know. I guess I must have been living in a bubble or something. I mean, I knew intellectually that it was very male dominated, but until I started to do some research and peel back the onion, I didn't realize how dismal the numbers actually were. And so, that was a Sunday morning. By Sunday afternoon, Girls Who Sell was born. And I had this aha moment that this was my life's mission, to not only be able to help close the gender gap and position sales as a viable career alternative for women, but to, focus on diversity and really bring more diverse women into the equation. And so there were a lot of great organizations, of course, like yours, Women Sales Pros, and National Association for Women Sales Professionals, and then, hashtag Girls Club, that were focused on women who were already in sales. But as I started doing my research, I realized that sales still had a very negative perception, and that it wasn't at, the high school and college level a career choice, that was being positioned as something that was viable for women to consider. And so that's the niche I decided to take, was work with younger women and build the pipeline, from the bottom up.
But you also started a foundation, like you did a whole bunch of things. You got a lot of things going on it, and you have a lot of energy for this, which I think is really great. Yeah, I agree that we're not catching the women early enough. And it hit me after talking with high school students that it isn't always that sales has a bad name, which it does when you ask people what they think about sales. But I met a lot of women who had never even heard of business to business selling.
Yeah.
Didn't even know it was a choice, and didn't have parents who were entrepreneurs or realtors or, people who were actually doing that in their family. Did you have anyone in your family that was an entrepreneur or a realtor or anything?
No, I had, my dad wasn't, well, yes, my dad was an entrepreneur. He owned a texture coating company, and he was a great salesperson, a really great salesperson. And actually, you asked what I wanted to do out of college. When I came out of college, I actually asked him if I could come in and, work my way up from the ground floor and learn the texture coating business. And again, talking about male, being male dominated, that was it. And he was super old school. I mean, that was just sales was not a place for women. And so he said,
Turned you down. Huh?
absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. Right. Like, and
Wow.
he put my brother into the business, who, he and a bunch of his, guy cronies who ran the company ended up, driving it into the ground and going bankrupt. And I know that I could have definitely done a much better job. But so I didn't have that role model. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, but what's interesting is she come to find out, and I didn't even realize this until after she passed away, that she was quite the entrepreneur herself. Yeah. And I didn't even know. So I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
So when I was 12, I grew up in a household that, we didn't really share our emotions, right? So I became very good at compartmentalization, which, in some cases it served me well. And in some cases it's,
So much.
hasn't, not so much.
Yeah.
But when I was 12, my parents, they didn't fight in front of the kids. They fought in, behind closed doors, but it was the middle of the night and I heard them fighting. And so I went and I crouched down and I sat in front of the room, and my dad, the door opened, my dad came flying out and said, "Heidi, I just want you to know this isn't your fault, but I am leaving." And I was just like mortified, right? And like my mom was just standing there incredibly stoic, not crying, just like super strong. And he left. He walked out the door. And my mom looked at me and said, "Heidi, if I teach you one thing in this lifetime, never, ever rely 100% on a man. Always have your own money and always be financially independent." And so it's probably no surprise, Lori, that, I ended up getting into sales and that, now my life's mission is to, teach young women about a career that will provide them financial independence. I married a man who was a stay-at-home dad, and I was, the breadwinner. So, you look at those pivotal moments in your life and the kind of influence they had. And, I didn't consciously make a decision, but there was probably something always in me from that very moment. It was like, I'm going to do something that is going to allow me to have financial independence, and sales and ended up being that. But my dad definitely was then he came back 3 days later and they were married for 64 years and everything was all good.
Right. You'll never forget that moment, right?
Never forget that moment, right? And it had such a huge impact on my life and the decisions that I made from that point on. And him turning me down pissed me off.
Yeah.
Like I was, again, made it like I am going to prove to him that I could do this. And
like a little chip on your shoulder.
So that's it.
That doesn't hurt at sales. Yeah.
So that's
Right.
my story. But he was definitely an influencer. And then I found out my mom was, so that was one moment. But after she passed, I actually found out that she not only taught needlepoint, she was this master needlepointer, but she not only taught needlepoint, but she actually created needlepoint kits.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's
Just
really
never thought about going into business because that just wasn't what her generation did. And
right.
so she created it for this store called Nettie's Needlepoint thing, and of course somebody stole the idea and made millions of dollars.
Right.
But she actually told that she was written up in the LA Times about starting needlepoint kits. I was like,
Huh.
God, why didn't she? She could have been so incredibly successful.
Yeah. I know my mom in the same different situation, but she was her talents were so underutilized. It was really sad, and that was what happened back then. So
Yeah.
well, let's talk about Girls Who Sell. What's on the horizon for through the end of the year, or what are you excited about?
Yeah, so we have the Girls Who Sell Academy and our hashtag Explore Sales program. And
Who's that for?
what's that?
Who's that for?
It's for high school and college students, although we do have some career transitioners that have been going through it as well.
Okay.
So it does exactly what you said earlier. It really educates young women on what a career in business to business sales is. So it's everything from what is B2B sales, why you should consider a career in it, what kind of career options are available, we deal with also with other things about, personality archetypes and how you leverage that to be, as your superpower to be successful, imposter syndrome, tackling limiting beliefs, storytelling. So there's a lot of other things that are part of it, but it's a super cool boot camp. And I'm taking that out to colleges across the country. It's subsidized by corporate sponsors. So if anybody's listening and has some interest, Outreach just sponsored the program that we did with Oregon State University. And we have 48 students that are graduating next week, actually.
Great.
And 21 mentors that helped and partnered with the students and were part of the program. And so there's no charge to the university or the student. So yeah, definitely focused on getting corporate sponsors and lining up additional universities so that we can take that out. So that's a big thing. Also focused on building a second level course that will get more deeply into and teaching sales skills so that they'll actually be career ready. We have some partnerships that we are putting into place that will help our Girls Who Sell Academy students and graduates get experiential learning opportunities as well as career placement. Now, I don't want to be in the career placement business, but we're partnering with a lot of other organizations that will help us. So as they graduate out of the academy, that they can get jobs, which would be great. And then we have a career app that's coming out. So Career Connections that we're going to be launching that will be focused specifically on early stage career placement for men and women, but mostly women in early stage sales careers. So
Well, that's great.
doing that. So yeah, some really fun stuff on the horizon. And of course, we've got the book.
Yeah. So the book Heels to Deals, you got 33 or over 30 women to share their stories of how they got into sales. It's kind of like this podcast in print,
Right.
Talk about their stories. And I think that's so important because when you can relate to something, you're more easily, see it, be it kind of a mindset. And it's hard to think about if you're looking at the Grant Cardones of the world and, these hardcore. I just saw just yesterday, a company that I'm somewhat connected to talk about how people can become sales savages and to be a sales savage. And I was just so disappointed, and I need to reach out to them and ask them why they're doing that. Because women don't want to be savages.
We don't want to be savages.
I don't think men do either, but we got to work on that. That's, in 2022, this is what I've seen it for years. You probably have too. seen trade show booths that with very inappropriate marketing campaigns for salespeople to focus on salespeople and just the word salesman instead of salespeople, seeing that used. I just saw it the other day. So there's still work to be done, Heidi, right?
Oh, there's a huge amount of work, and I agree. I mean, I say quite often that representation matters, and I'm so grateful that you wrote the foreword for the book. So
Thank you
so much. I'm
It's an honor.
honored, you and Jill Conrad.
It's an honor to be connected to the book and to meet all the women virtually and some in person, which is really wonderful. Some I knew already. And hopefully I'll get to one of the live stops that you're going to have. You're going to be in Dallas next and then LA, right?
In LA in October for Women in Sales Month. The dates are still to TBD on that, but it'll probably be towards the end of October. But yeah, I mean, what it's all about, as I was thinking, how do we influence young women to consider a career in sales? What better way than, exactly what you're doing on this podcast, but, like you said, in print, what a better way to demonstrate that you can be successful in sales than by showing and sharing the stories of a very diverse group of women. And that's actually what I really love about the book. I mean, the stories are phenomenal, and just seeing how courageous the women are, and how some of what they've gone through, some coming from out of generational poverty and abusive relationships, and single moms like yourself, and and just like these heroic stories of women who were so strong and so brave, and being able to share that, and then their guidance and advice. And, at first I was like, oh gosh, is everybody going to be saying the exact same thing? And actually it didn't end up that way, right?
Yeah.
Read the book. There's so many golden nuggets of wisdom. And what I love, I was just at I spoke at a conference a couple of weeks ago, Women in Sales conference. And this young woman came up to me with the book, and it was completely beaten up. I actually posted a
That's great.
picture of her. It was like completely beaten up, and it was like,
Highlight.
out, highlighted, pages,
Yeah.
turned over and stuff. And oh my gosh, Lori, that was one of the most best moments ever, because I use this as a reference guide. It's like a survival guide, right?
Wow.
Like,
That's
that's
great.
it, right? Like, well, it's at least one, even just one woman, right? But I think we're making a big difference. So
Yeah. So you want women to get that book. It's not available through Amazon, right? Heels to Deals. And I'll post it in the notes for this segment. And also they can reach out to you through LinkedIn. Is that the best way?
100%. I'm totally accessible on LinkedIn. So that's definitely the best way to get me. Or they can email me at Heidi at GirlzWhoSell.com. And that's girls with a Z, GIRLZ, whosell.com. And, if there's any companies listening, I welcome you to reach out. I'll do a push, but, the only way to get more women into sales is to, get more women interested earlier on in the pipeline. And so I think companies, as a part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, can contribute and make a big difference.
Yeah, that's great. And you'll be one of the speakers at the She Sells Summit, which will be a virtual event in November 3rd. And I'm really excited about that. It's going to be such a great event.
I am super excited too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will keep watching and supporting your efforts. And Women Sales Pros is happy to support whatever it is that you're doing. You're really stirring things up and getting things going in professional selling. And I just want to thank you for that, and keep at it. I think together we can make some change.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you and all your support.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales. You can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com /podcast. Help us spread the word and let's change the face of B2B